Hello, Nigel.
Hi Peter, how are you?
I'm great. I'm great. How are you doing?
Yeah, no, we're keeping our head down. It's a very difficult time, isn't it, with
It
everybody?
is. I mean, what do you think about it all?
Um, well, today is a very sad day for us because 3 o'clock this morning we're up having two funerals on via link,
Oh,
and so to do that at 3:30 in the morning here our time, it was very sombering and very sad, and obviously no people. So what do I think of it all? I think there's a massive correction happening in the world. I think we're not being told the truth entirely about the virus. For the world to be shut down like it is, and the economic impact that it's having, and the devastation on people's lives is the saddest thing I think any human being can actually witness.
just to talk about the funerals, were they the family members in the UK?
Yeah.
Very sorry to hear that. Condolences.
It's just a very worrying time, and I think people have still got to be very, very careful. Even when they reopen a little bit, I think social distancing and everything will stay with us now forevermore.
And are you wearing a mask? Are you being really strict on the way you're running everything?
Well, we don't really go out, so we're not wearing masks in the home. But if we had to go anywhere and get fuel for the car, or sometimes get some supplies, yeah, gloves and masks, and abiding by what all the recommendations are in the country, and they're very strict here.
Nigel, you probably haven't had much time to think about the motor racing world, but I don't know if you've heard the news over the last couple of days that Sebastian Vettel and Ferrari are parting company at the end of this contract, at the end of this year, being replaced by Carlos Sainz, the young Spaniard, son of famous Carlos, the rally driver, of course, and Daniel Ricciardo leaving Renault to go to McLaren. We've got Mercedes engines next year with Lando Norris in the other car. I just wonder what you thought about all that, and Sebastian as well. I mean, you've been through it at Ferrari, yeah?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no question there's lots of things going on, but I mean, I have to say, being a huge fan of all sports, it fades into insignificance as to what's going on in the world at the moment. And my biggest concern with Formula One is, will the lesser teams survive financially? So there's 20 cars on the grid for when the season opens, if it opens later this year. So, yeah, I mean, if you put the virus to one side, you can say that's great. I think it's great for all the drivers to have a shuffle round, and I really hope Sebastian doesn't retire. I hope that maybe, who knows, he might join Lewis at Mercedes. You never.
That'd be quite something. This is an off-the-cuff question, but I know you're not interested in having your own Formula One team now. But if you were, and if you did, very hypothetical question, what two drivers would you choose?
Oh, I'd put Sebastian and Lewis together. Definitely. That'd be very interesting, wouldn't it?
It would be. Well, it'd be interesting watching you keeping them apart, actually.
No, I think there'd be a fantastic team. I think without any question. I think just in general, though, Peter. I mean, the thing that's disappointing as a sports fan, not being critical. There's only been 20 cars on the grid for a whole number of years now. The grid should have 26 cars on the grid to give other drivers up and coming an opportunity. And I think the correction that's going to happen in the world as well is how can all the teams now really justify spending the fortunes they spend on trying to go half a second or a second lap quicker.
Well,
So
of course, my next comment is cynical, but we've got the budget cap, 175 million now, only.
yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
It is a bit ridiculous. Nigel, just going on the theme of drivers, though, which of the current drivers in Formula One do you think is the one that is most like you in the way you drove and the way you approached motor racing and Formula One?
I think, first of all, it's a great question. The second thing, it's the hardest thing to answer because when we drove Formula One, you can't compare because when we made a mistake, we got hurt. The barriers are right next to the track, so if we made a heinous mistake, we paid for it by hurting ourselves and breaking something, which obviously, sadly, I did a number of times. So the present drivers have an incredible opportunity of an incredible career because, I'll never forget, and I'm not just picking on Max Verstappen, it's just an example. Those many years ago when he went head in at Monte Carlo at the end of the straight.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when I saw it, I was really in fear for his safety and his life, and and I thought, oh boy, his legs are going to be really damaged, and he pops out the car.
Yeah.
And for us being a seasoned driver to see what fantastic safety cells there are now and their barriers that you hit, it's absolutely brilliant. So a lot of drivers get what I would say a second and third and fourth chance, where in our day they wouldn't because they'd hurt themselves. But Max, no question, has got tremendous talent, and there's for me no question if Red Bull get it all together and Adrian does another incredible car as he always does. And I think Honda deserve the wins they've had and the success they've had. And I hope they deliver the power that Red Bull can deliver a championship for the team and hopefully for Max. The other drivers, you give the circumstances. You've obviously got Lewis, who's going to be the hot favourite again with Mercedes. I think it's unprecedented in the whole sporting history of Formula One, and I don't know whether you agree with this, Peter. I think there's only two drivers who have ever been supported to the incredible heights that they have, and that's Michael Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton. And I'd go to say that, the Ferrari and Mercedes, although very, very close, I'd have to say the support that Lewis has had through his whole career is just astonishing. But Mercedes is just a machine. They're, you have to say, wow, when you think you've caught up with them, they've always got something in their pocket to bring out straight away.
I often make the point, given the number of Grand Prix that you eventually won in the championship, of course, that you didn't actually find yourself in a race-winning competitive car realistically until the 5th year of your Formula One career. And if you put that statistic against not only Lewis and Michael, but against Prost, Senna, a lot of guys who were kind of rated very early on in their careers. And it still amazes me, actually, how you were able to sustain it for that long, sustain the patience and the determination eventually to get it together. Obviously, in back end of 85, the car was finally a winning car. But I mean, the stuff you had at Lotus and some of the stuff, Pirelli active ride car. I mean, I suppose we can laugh about. I can laugh about it. I don't suppose you ever laugh about it, but
I think that's why we're only semi-sane.
I know, it was unbelievable, wasn't it? Unbelievable. I was looking at a picture of you the other day of you, the first test you did in the Williams at, I think it was Donington in the 09 Honda, and you're still wearing your John Player Lotus overalls as you're getting in the car. Amazing, huh?
People forget, Peter, and you probably know I don't mind letting people know my first year's salary in Formula One was $25,000, and I had to pay my own airfares and hotel bills and hire cars.
Yeah.
And it wasn't enough to cover the costs. We were several years in Formula One, still living in a semi-detached house, and I don't think there's many Formula One drivers doing that these days.
Moving on to happier things. Are you able to get out and play any golf now with the lockdown, or are you still shut in there?
A little bit, but it's I will say with quite a lot of sadness and the reality that the social distancing. We play two different courses, one where you walk and another one where you buggy ride, and you have buggies on your own. And obviously, you can't touch the flags, you can't repair the divots in the fairways, you don't have any rakes for the bunkers, and because everything's taken quite rightly very, very seriously. So although you're playing golf and getting out and having a bit of exercise, it's a very different dynamic. I mean, there's no spark there. It's a question of more exercise. Because you've got to keep your immune system going, because obviously people are just locking themselves down inside. That's very bad for your immune system, and it's very bad for your health.
What you've just touched on there is possibly what the atmosphere might be like if they try and hold the British Grand Prix at Silverstone behind closed doors. Can you imagine that? A British Grand Prix with no fans?
I can't imagine it, and I don't think I can see it being justified, because until it's safe, how on earth can you justify teams coming over, which then are supposedly going to be quarantined for 14 days, then do the Grand Prix, and then go back and be quarantined somewhere else? It's just not viable.
Well, it's a tough call, and again, I know you've been asked this question many times, but the reality is, when you were racing at the British Grand Prix in a competitive car and the crowd were behind you, it was actually worth something to you, right?
Oh my goodness me! I mean, in the 80s and through the 80s and early 90s, when you had 250,000 plus people, coming to the British Grand Prix, it was just the crowd. It was just immense. I mean, you and I remember. I mean, if you were lucky, you got out of the car park in 5 hours, maybe 7 hours. It was extraordinary. Obviously, through health and safety now, the numbers are limited anyway. But yeah, it's incredible. I mean, I can't believe it'll be very strange to see any event, even a soccer event or whatever, or golf event, with all the great golfers in the world playing a tournament with no spectators. Spectators and the fans give it the atmosphere and give it the validity of what it is. And I think, everybody will struggle with that.
Well, let me go one step further. We're back in 87. You've made your pit stop. You're starting to catch Nelson. You can see the crowd going crazy. You can see the Union Jacks waving. You can feel you're obviously pumping adrenaline like crazy. I mean, would you have driven that same Grand Prix if it was an empty Silverstone with no crowd at all? That's a good point, isn't it?
No, it's a great point. And I mean, it's a one-off piece in all the Grand Prix I ever did. I think 1987 at Silverstone, it was a completely one-off. And that's why sport's so fantastic. And even now, I'm going goosepimply now just thinking about it. It was a sensational day, and it was like a freak occurrence. Will Wade coming off the tyre, having to make a pit stop because I couldn't see properly going into the corners, and then catching him like we did, and the crowd obviously responding. It's just something amazing, and that's why if you don't have any fans or no crowd or anything at all, then I would think it would be very difficult for any driver or footballer or golfer to get themselves up and respond, because everybody needs that to actually perform to the best of their ability. I think it would be incredibly difficult. But more importantly, Peter, I think when they put these things on and there's crisis in the world like it is, it's a very difficult decision because, especially with motor racing, the amount of money is being spent. When you've got so many people unemployed, people can't feed themselves and various other things. I think we have to get things the right way up before we, go racing again, in my opinion.
And those massive motorhomes in the paddock don't exactly send out the right message now either.
I think it would be totally the wrong message. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Formula One, but, unless the timing's right, I certainly would resent it very much when, there's so many people who are suffering. Hopefully when things get back to normal, if they ever do, I mean, it will be very exciting again, but until that time, I have to say, the sports in general are not important. Civilization and the people, and my heart goes out to all the people who've had devastation. And, I think the countries and the government should focus very hard on trying to get a vaccine as soon as they possibly can.
Thanks, Nigel. Great talking to you. Talk soon. Stay safe, stay healthy.